Hey, it's Elisa. Welcome to Rock Your Next Chapter. And I hope to be able to, I have a lot of information to share with you. So hopefully I'll be able to get to all of it. And I also hope to be able to get to your questions. So if you have a question, write it down. You might want to put it in chat. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat, but since I'm sharing a presentation, it might be a little tricky. So if I don't see your question, we can either get to it at the end or we can set up a time to talk after we're done. So without any further ado, I'm going to share my screen. So let's get to my screen share. And we're going to jump into rocking your next chapter. So today you're going to learn, and since we're at the end of 2021, we're going into 22, and anytime we come into New Year's, there's always talk about resolutions. And so some of the things we're going to talk about are why resolutions don't work for most people and how you can set yourself up for success. So as we're going into 2022, maybe reframing what your goal is. So not saying that you shouldn't try to change, because of course we're all hopefully changing and evolving and growing, but maybe framing it a little bit differently. So you can put your best foot forward and really give yourself a chance for success. The next thing, why motivations won't get you the results you're looking for. So a lot of times when I talk to people and I ask them, why aren't you getting the results? Sometimes the answer is, well, I'm just not motivated enough. And really motivation's a tricky kind of thing. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Also, the one thing you can start doing today to not only help you lose weight, but to help you get a better night's sleep, how to start the day on the right foot so you have more energy throughout the entire day. My favorite strategies to add movement breaks into my day. And I also look at those as a sneaky way to burn extra calories and to, tone your body on the sly. And then the number one strategy to help your body metabolize more fat without having to starve yourself. So those are quite a few things that some strategies that I want to share with you. But we're also really going to focus on how you can rock your next chapter and include all of those things as well. So before we get started, I always ask that you try to reduce the distractions around you and stay until the end, because I'm going to share a bonus with you at the end. And I do want this to be interactive. I have a lot to share, so it may not be as interactive as normal, but you can definitely, like I said, put questions in the chat, put comments in the chat. And if I don't get to them during this time together, then I will look at them and get back to you one-on-one. You're going to learn a lot, and hopefully we will have time for that Q&A at the end. And I'll let you know where you can get more information. And again, there is a special offer for those of you who are on here live. So my first question to you, and you can put this in the chat as either a yes or a no, a Y or an N. Are you planning on setting a New Year's resolution? And, here are some a visual of some different things that you might make as a resolution: losing weight, managing your debt, helping others, more family time, improving yourself. And I think a lot of things, and I'm sure as well, a lot of things fall under improving self. So are you planning on setting a New Year's resolution? And we'll just take a look at those yeses and nos. And one thing that I wanted to share, this statistic, and when I saw it, it was a little shocking, but in some ways not so much. Only about 8% of Americans who set a resolution keep it all year long. So for most people, 92% of Americans who set a resolution, they don't keep it all year. And in fact, the vast majority, I think it's over 80% of resolutions fall off by February 1st. So a lot of people go out, gung-ho, really ready to, make that big change. And maybe they make that big change just a little bit too big so that it just isn't sustainable. So that's why I mentioned about trying to maybe perhaps reframe the changes that you want to make or the goal that you're going after. Because when we look at it as a resolution, sometimes we think, okay, I'm never going to eat chocolate again, or, and I'm going to do that because I want to lose 40 pounds. So I'm never, ever going to eat chocolate. I'm never going to do this. We get all these, all or nothings where it's like, you have all or nothing thinking, black and white. And what I found through my time as a health coach is that when we make our changes small and sustainable, that's where we get the most success. We're just going on, let's see here. And this is another question that I have for you guys, and you can pick the number that fits why you're here. I'm here because I've tried changing my health in the past, but I usually quit before I could achieve the results I was going for. Maybe you've lost the weight in the past, but then you gained it back and more. Maybe you're not sleeping well, or you lack energy, or you're noticing a decline in your health and you're associating it with getting older. Maybe you feel uncomfortable in your body. You've got aches and pains and you feel a little bloated. Maybe you're just not sure how to turn things around. You want to change things and you try, but you're not sure where to start. Or possibly maybe you're pretty healthy already, but you're into learning a tip or two. And then finally, the last one I have down here is it's cold outside. Where I am, it was actually a little tiny bit warmer today, but it's very damp. So it felt cold and damp today. So, or maybe you're lucky and you live somewhere where it's beautiful, but you know, I'm always curious why people are able to share the time with me. And if I haven't said it before, I just want to say it again, that I'm so grateful that you're taking this time to be here, because this is something that you're doing to invest in you, to invest in the future you, because you're investing your time by being here to rock your next chapter. So just looking at the chat, we've got a few different, numbers showing up. So a little bit of everything. And I think that's pretty much the way a lot of people are, there's usually a lack of sleep, lack of energy, wanting to make that change, but not being sure where to start. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier was the idea about needing motivation. And the number one myth that I wanted to share with you, the first myth that I wanted to share with you, is that you need motivation to get started. And that's really one of the furthest things from the truth. Because when we wait for our motivation to get to a certain level to get started, sometimes we never get there. It's a phrase that I use, like sometimes we hear ready, willing, and able. It's like, are you ready and willing and able to do something? And really, we got to break that down, because if you wait until you're ready, you may never do it. So it's kind of like having kids. Like if you waited until it was the right time and you had enough money in the bank and all these things lined up, you might never have any kids. And the same thing goes with any other change in your life. And that includes taking care of yourself. If you wait until you're ready to, put on the workout clothes, or you're ready to join the class, or you're ready to, step out of your comfort zone, you might never do those things. And really, it comes down to, are you willing? Are you willing to make that change? And our motivation, truthfully, can go up and down. So sometimes our motivation is very high, like when we first make that, again, going back to New Year's resolutions, if you make a resolution, you might be really motivated January 1st, and you're like, I am going to do this. Once and for all, I'm going to do this. And then, maybe January 3rd, when it's no longer, got the shine and the, excitement around it, and now you have to get up because you said you were going to get up an extra hour early or 2 extra hours early and do this, run around the block, and maybe you're not even regularly walking around the block. So now it's like, oh my goodness, and now your motivation might be a lot lower. So when you count on motivation as the thing to get you there, a lot of times you might end up just quitting. But when you have that high motivation, if you make a plan and maybe you say, okay, 3 days a week, I'm going to walk for 15 minutes. And you'll eventually want to get up to running a half an hour or running for 45 minutes or whatever it is. But if you start small, when you have that motivation and you have that, when you make that plan, when you have some motivation, then when you have those times of low motivation, you've got that plan set. So you don't have to make a decision at that point. This is going to go. Okay, myth number 2. I don't have the time or money to make myself a priority. And this one I hear a lot. So I'll hear, when this happens, when the kids are in school, when the kids are out of school, when I'm done with that project, when the home improvement project is done. Like, so maybe we're doing remodeling, or maybe you're taking care of elderly parents, or you've got something going on, you've got something at work, or, you want to wait until that one bill is paid off. And you just keep putting your health behind all those other things. And the truth is that there's always going to be something. I mean, we all have the exact same 24 hours in a day, but some people make much better use out of their time. And then I don't want to say better, I don't want to put a judgment on it, but it's how you choose to spend your time and how you choose to spend your money. So what you make a priority, you'll find time for. So if you suddenly decide you want to learn how to play the guitar, you might find time to watch YouTube videos, or you might find time to sit there and practice. Whereas, maybe something else that you're not, super excited to do, or maybe, you feel like it's, scarier to try something new, you might not make that time. You might not chisel the time out. You might say, well, I don't have the time, but really maybe you're sitting on the couch for 3 or 4 hours a night after you get home and have dinner to watch TV. And, maybe you could rearrange that time a little bit, or go to bed a little earlier and get up a little bit earlier. So, just looking at what is a priority, because the results you're getting now are really going to tell you what the priorities are for you right now. And if you really want to change something, if you want something else in your next chapter, then you've got to make something else a priority. And as Warren Buffett said, and I love this quote, I have this on my website as well, the best investment you can make is in yourself. And that goes to not just money, but also time, because when you are trading your time, you're actually trading part of your life. So if you're sitting on the couch, you're spending that time, that part of your life, to do that activity of maybe watching TV or watching a movie, watching Netflix, whatever it is. And if there's something that is important to you, or being healthier, or getting more active, spending more time with your kids, getting on the floor with your kids, or going for a hike with your partner, if that's important to you, then you'll invest that time to make yourself a healthier version of you so you can do those things. And another quote that I wanted to share is that those that wait for the right time run out of time. So if you're constantly saying tomorrow, 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 eventually there's going to come a time when you're going to run out of those tomorrows. So just kind of thinking about that. So when you ask yourself when, don't keep saying tomorrow, say today. So what can you do today that your future self will thank you for? And then finally, the third myth is that it's selfish to care for myself. So do you feel that way? Like, do you feel like if you go to yoga class, or go to a kickboxing class, go for a swim, go for a run, go for a bike ride, go for a walk, that because you're taking time perhaps away from your family, and, sometimes the really cool thing is you can combine activities with your family, but maybe if you're, spending time away because you're going to the gym, or, doing one of these activities, you feel like it's selfish that you're taking that time away from being with your kids, or being with your partner, or your mother. But in reality, and we all know this, I think we all know this to some extent, is that you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you're not taking care of yourself, it gets to the point where you're, having a much harder time to take care of other people. And in fact, you might even end up being the one that people have to care for because you're not caring for yourself. Maybe you wind up with, some type of disease that's, brought about by chronic inflammation. It could be high blood pressure, diabetes, and now somebody else is caring for you instead of the other way around. So it's not selfish to care for yourself, to take care of yourself first if you want to care for others. And then the fourth myth is that asking for support is a sign of weakness. And I don't know about you, but I think that's really a sign of strength when you ask for support, because a lot of us are taught, or maybe we just see it modeled, and so we embody it as well, where we think that it's a weakness to ask for help, that you should be able to do it all on your own. But in reality, when you ask for support, you can get where you're going so much quicker. And in fact, groups that work dynamically, and the coaching group that I lead, it's a dynamic group, and they get results typically 7 times faster, or 70% faster than doing it on your own. So a lot of times if you're trying to work, lose weight or change your health or, anything without an accountability partner or a group that's a group of people who are working towards similar changes, it becomes that much harder because you're doing it all on your own. You don't have that extra support to help you get up that next level. I'm using my mouse. There it is. Okay, so we covered some of the myths, but what does it mean to rock your next chapter? And I made an acronym out of ROCK. So what I wanted to share with you is R. R is reimagining you. And what do I mean by that? It's redefining your vision of you. So maybe you've always been, the you that you know. And when we think about our future, we tend to think of ourselves in reference to how we've been. But an example that I love to use is that me becoming a runner. So when I was younger, I was not an athlete. I didn't think of myself as an athlete, but I had decided that I wanted to do a triathlon. I wanted to do a sprint triathlon. And from that, I had to start thinking of myself as an athlete. And through that, I decided that I wanted to become a runner. And I really consciously chose becoming a runner. And in doing that, I had to recreate my vision of myself in my own head and in my mind. So if there's something that you want for yourself, and it doesn't have to be becoming a runner or a triathlete, it might be you want to lose 25 pounds, or maybe you want to feel better in your clothing, or you just want to go down a couple of sizes. And you know that there's, whatever that goal is for you. So you have to start being able to see yourself as that future version of you. And in fact, you might know people who've lost a lot of weight, and then unfortunately they gained it back, and maybe even more so. And I tend to believe it's because they couldn't really see that vision of themselves as a thinner, healthier person. So even if you've lost the weight and you still see yourself as, unhealthy or unfit, or, that, maybe 10 sizes bigger than where you are now, you're really making it a lot harder for yourself, because what's happening is you're creating that vision in your brain, in your mind, and your mind is trying to set you up to keep in that same realm, or in that same body that's in your brain. So if you want to be that healthier, fitter person, you have to first start seeing yourself as that healthier, fitter person, and be really specific. So, and you can even ask yourself, it's kind of like the what would Jesus do, but ask yourself, what would, and you can either name yourself in the future, or you can, maybe if there's somebody else that you know who is really fit and healthy, and you want to basically be like them. So it's kind of like, be like Mike. What would Mike do? Or what would Janet do? Or what would so-and-so do? And have it in your mind. Or what would the future me do? So if down the road, you want to be 25 pounds thinner, or you want to play tennis, or you want to, go horseback riding, and you have to start doing the things that future version of you would do. Okay, so moving on. Open to possibilities. So that's opening yourself up to new ideas, new thoughts, new experiences. And instead of, saying no because it sounds scary or it's different than what you're used to, really allowing yourself to open up to that. And remembering that, like the expression goes, the definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over again and expecting to get different results. So if you want to get different results, the most important thing to do is to open yourself up to a new way of being. Then the letter C, commit to yourself. And this one's really, really important. So when we go back to what I mentioned with motivation, if you're having a hard time staying committed to yourself, or if you're, you feel like, oh, my motivation's gone, so I'm not going to do my workout today. Once you commit to yourself and you figure out your what and your why, which is what you want to change and why, and it has to be on a deeper emotional level. It can't just be, well, I want to lose weight because, I want to lose 10 pounds because the doctor said I had to, or I need to lower my blood pressure because the doctor said I had to. You need to find that why that speaks to your heart, that speaks to your emotion, that you can feel the importance of it. Again, I mentioned things like wanting to be more active with your partner, or get on the floor and play with your kids, or be outside playing with your kids, jumping on the trampoline, or playing softball or kickball with your kids. And once you can find that why, and you can really commit to yourself, and not, because the doctor said you should do it, or because your partner said you should do it, or, your friends are trying this new diet, so you thought you would do it too. You have to make it something that is meaningful to yourself in order to make it stick, especially when it gets hard. Because, of course, anytime we're making a change, because we're trying on a new way of being, there are going to be times that it's going to be hard. So you have to have that commitment to yourself to be able to walk you through that time. And then the letter K, keep moving forward. So as we're moving forward, guess what? Sometimes we stumble, sometimes we make missteps, we make mistakes, we're not always perfect. And you know what? Nobody on this earth is perfect. I'm not perfect, you're not perfect, your partner, your mother, nobody's perfect. So when you make those mistakes, when you have a less than perfect day, dust yourself off, forgive yourself, and keep moving forward. Don't use that mistake as a reason to, just throw in the towel. So these are the cornerstones to rocking your next chapter. So let's pause. So I'm just going to change the page here, and I'm going to hit pause for 1 second, or I'm just going to mute myself. So as we're moving on, and we don't have too much time to journal or get into this too much, but it's just something that you can think about. You can write it down if you'd like. But this is something that we'll go over in the program, because this is a really important part as well. And it's naming your last chapter. And it doesn't have to be just the last chapter. It might even be, your story up until now, and being real about it. Because sometimes we get stuck in our stories about what's happened to us, or who we are, or limiting thoughts, limiting beliefs. And, maybe there's, something that's holding us back from that next version that we want to become. And as an example, I'll go back to the story I told you about me and running. The majority of my life, as much as I loved to work out, so I've been into fitness and working out since I was in, my early teens. But from early, elementary school, I hated kickball. Like, I had this fear of playing kickball. I wasn't good at sports, and I did not consider myself an athlete in any way. So that was the chapter that I was in for a long time, that, if there was, a chance to play a sport, like in gym class, it was kickball day, or actually I loved volleyball. So I'll tell you that I loved volleyball, and I even really truly loved field hockey when we played that in gym class. But when it came to things like kickball or baseball or softball, not so good. And, that was really a part of, the image that I held in my brain about myself. And I'm guessing that you have an image that you hold in your brain, in your mind, about yourself as well. And really asking yourself, what is the name of that chapter? Like, how do you define that chapter? And, maybe if, you're the chubby one, or, maybe you were the skinny one, and maybe you were always really in good shape most of your life, and now you're struggling with it. And, you're having a hard time dealing with this new version of you. So it might not be your full story. It might be your latest chapter, but again, it can be either. And sometimes we get stuck in that story, and it might be the story of, just our family life, or the role that we played within our family. Maybe you're the good one, or the dependable one, or maybe you're the one who's not dependable, or you're the lazy one. And so that might be the name of your chapter. But again, this is the old you. So write it down, figure out who you were, and then we'll look at your next chapter. So what is the name of your next chapter? What do you really want? And this one is definitely going to take more time than we have right here, but really thinking about what it is that you want. So if you had a crystal ball, or you had maybe not even a crystal ball, you had like a magic wand, and you could decide right now what that version of you is going to look like in 12 months. So when I have this call again a year from now, who are you going to be? What are you going to be doing? What activities are you going to have in your life? How are you going to feel in your body? What's your energy going to be like? And name that chapter. So this picture I shared because one of my all-time favorite songs is Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield. And this song, and maybe you know it, it's actually several years old now. I'm not quite sure when it came out, but this has been on my running playlist for years. Like ever since I first started running marathons, this has been on my running playlist because it gives me such, I guess, hope and inspiration that I have the power to write my future story. And basically, you know, no matter what has happened in my story before, I can write what happens next. And the cool thing is you have this exact same power. So, you know, you have a blank notebook in front of you, and it doesn't matter what your story has been up until now. You get to write the next chapter. And you might say, well, no, I've got this disease, or, you know, maybe you've got, you know, something that you're dealing with that you feel like it's out of your control. Maybe you've had high blood pressure, or maybe you've got a lot of weight to lose. Maybe you have 50 or 100 pounds to lose, maybe more. Or maybe, you know, you've been dealing with headaches or not sleeping well, and you feel like these are things that are all out of your control. Or maybe, excuse me, you feel like whatever this is that you're dealing with, your mom had it or your dad had it. Maybe you've got hot flashes, and you know you just cannot keep your body temperature regulated, and because of that, you're not sleeping well, and you're irritable, and you wake up, you know, several times at night because you just can't stay comfortable, and then the next day you're miserable because you didn't get enough sleep, and then you yell at your husband, and you know it could be all these things going on, and you think, well, how the heck am I going to write my next chapter when I'm dealing with all of this? And really it comes down to the choices that you make and the small things that you do in your day that add up over time. And of course, these are all things that we get into in Rock Your Next Chapter. But just keeping that in mind, you might not think you have a whole lot of control, but the choices that you make add up over time. And really, your power to choose is your secret superpower. So, you know, maybe when you were a kid, you wanted to fly or you wanted to be invisible, but you've got an even greater superpower, and that's your power to choose. And you get to choose, you know, how you show up for yourself. You get to choose how you nourish yourself, just like you're choosing being here right now and listening to this call. You have so much more power than you think. So getting into a little bit of Rock Your Next Chapter, and just, you know, giving you a little bit of information, because there's so much, and we can definitely, you know, talk deeper into all of this. But some of the things that we do with Rock Your Next Chapter are upgrade your habits. And, you know, we all have habits, things like brushing our teeth, or, you know, when you go to bed, what your bedtime routine is, what you do in the morning, what you do after you eat. You know, these are all our habits. And when you start to look at them and the habits that are serving you, and then maybe there are some habits that aren't serving you so well. And we'll look at little ways that you can upgrade your habits. And when we look at that, the cool thing to me about this is that we are all so unique. You're a unique snowflake. And the things that work for me may or may not work for you. And the things that work for you may or may not work for me. But it's upgrading your habits and making the tweaks, making the small sustainable changes that you can, you know, make a part of your life so that they last, so that you can be healthy, not just for a week or a month or 3 months. So a lot of times you might hear about, you know, a weight loss program where you're doing something for 10 days or 10 weeks. And then after that, you're off on your own and you go back to the way you were, and you gain back all the weight that you lost, and then you gain back some more, and you really haven't changed at all. You've just gone back to your original way of being. So this is about upgrading your habits. so that you can be healthy for not just a season, but for the rest of your life. And then creating balance. So one of the things that I am so grateful that I found is Ayurveda. And yoga and Ayurveda are sister sciences. And you probably know that I'm a yoga teacher. So I love yoga. I love the practice of yoga. And within yoga, I found, again, I learned about Ayurveda. And Ayurveda is really, it stands for the science of life, or it means the science of life. And it's about creating balance. And not just so you can balance on a balance beam or on the sidewalk, but it's about creating balance within your body, creating balance with nature. You and I, we are all a part of nature. And sometimes we forget that. We think, because we live in houses and we have lights and, we get separated, or we separate ourselves from being a part of nature. But we are a part of nature. So it's learning to create that balance, living in rhythm with the sun and the moon, and eating at certain time, and moving our bodies at certain times, and then resting at certain times, and finding the times that create that balance within our bodies with nature, so that we can optimize our health, lessen our chance for disease, optimize our digestion. That's a big one. So if you want to optimize your digestion, you want to start thinking about, how can you live in balance? How can you create balance for yourself? And actually, anytime we're dealing with any type of disease, it's because we're dealing with an imbalance. And Ayurveda is super cool because Ayurveda looks at 6 stages of disease. And the first few stages of disease in Ayurveda, Western medicine doesn't even address. So until you have a symptom that you would go to the doctor, they don't consider that disease. But what happens is when you're in those first few stages of disease in Ayurveda, you actually have a greater chance of reversing it and getting yourself back into balance. So, once you can recognize that maybe you're starting towards imbalance in Ayurveda, you can, maybe nip it in the bud and get yourself back to balance a lot quicker. All right, so I won't get too much into this. I just wanted to share this with you. This is the Dosha Clock, and I use this a lot in teaching and in talking about the optimal times to eat, the optimal times to move your body, the optimal times to sleep. And just as a familiarity thing, you might be familiar with Ayurveda, and perhaps you've heard about the doshas, which are the 3 energies that are in everything in nature. They're in every cell of your body. They're in the time of day, which you can see here with the clock. They're in time of year, and they're in the time of life. So this is one thing that we look at quite a bit when going through and talking about the best times, to move your body, to eat, to sleep. And we also talk about these terms, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, in relation to your own constitution. And each one of us, we all have our own unique constitution, or how we're made up of these 3 doshas. And they're made up of the 5 elements. And you can see really quickly here that, Vata is primarily air and ether. Pitta is primarily fire and water. And then Kapha is primarily water and earth. So those are the 5 elements: air, ether, fire, water, and earth. And just like the 3 doshas are in nature, those 5 elements are in everything in nature. So this is something we look at, quite a bit, and it can be really helpful. We look at it in reference to those things, time of day, time of year, time of life, and, also in how your constitution is made up. And once you can understand some of those things, and, there's never a test. It's not like you have to understand it completely. But once you can get a grasp on the elements and why certain things are the way they are, why the doshas are the way they are, you can start to see where you might be out of balance and what you can do to create some balance in your health. And basically what we say in Ayurveda is that like increases like, and opposites reduce each other. So the like increases like is, we tend to, like, if you're eating maybe you normally don't eat Doritos, and then one day somebody gives you a bag of Doritos at lunch. You think, oh, these are great. And then the next day you get a bag of Doritos, and then the third day. So now you're increasing the likelihood that you're going to have Doritos every day at lunch because that like increases like. Now, maybe you want to change that habit and you want to get away from the Doritos and you think, well, I'd rather have an apple instead of those Doritos or some carrot sticks. So you have the carrot sticks for 3 days. Now you're increasing the likelihood that perhaps you're going to have those carrot sticks every day. So that's just one example of like increasing like. All right, so some of the tips, the strategies that I wanted to share with you for rocking your next chapter. And several of these we get into way deeper in the program, but just, to give you a couple of takeaways. One is to close your kitchen at least 3 hours before going to bed. And this is really going to help maximize your digestion, because if you're still digesting when you go to bed, now your body has to work at digesting when it's supposed to be doing the work of repair and restoration. And again, we get really into the best time to eat your biggest meal. But if you can keep this rule of thumb in your, the back of your head, it can really help with not only digestion, but also meal spacing and maximizing fat metabolism as well. So if you close your kitchen at least 3 hours before bed, and that includes things like, having a glass of wine. So anything with calories has to be digested. So we want all those things to be at least 3 hours before bed. So that includes popcorn, that glass of wine, what else can I think? Hot chocolate, anything that, you might be tempted to. So if you're used to having a bedtime snack, you might want to try and push that forward and, start experimenting with it. And these tips that I'm going to share with you, what I often say is just experiment with it for a few days or a week and just see how it feels in your body. See what changes. Know that you don't have to make these changes forever, but do it as an experiment and see what happens. And, because I've known some people who say, I need my bedtime snack. I'm so used to it. But then when they've tried it, they're like, hey, I actually slept better when I didn't have that snack before bed, when they didn't have all that food rolling around in their belly with their belly trying to digest it. So again, use it as an experiment. So after you've had that, your last calories at least 3 hours before bed, create a bedtime routine that sets you up for a great tomorrow. Try and avoid screens at least a couple hours, at least 1 hour before bed, if not more. And you might want to do things like having the blue light off on your phone, putting your phone to bed in another room. Maybe you want to take a shower before bed. Maybe you want to give yourself a foot massage. There are all kinds of things that you can do for your bedtime routine. And what happens when you have a bedtime routine, it tells your brain and your body, what, we're shifting gears. It's time to get ready for bed. Now, if you're, staring at your phone like these guys are, what happens is now the blue light, first of all, can mess with your circadian rhythm. And our brains don't really know, our eyes and our brains don't know how to deal with the light that, that blue light. It's on a different part of the spectrum than what our eyes are used to dealing with. So it throws us, our brains out of whack. So it can affect, normally when the sun goes down, that starts to, trigger us that, okay, we should be getting ready for bed. But if you think about it, we all have lights in our houses. We have the TV on, we have different things. And especially the light from the phone, the blue light, it kind of messes with that circadian rhythm. So if you're not having an easy time falling to sleep, I definitely recommend that, you put your phone to bed an hour or so before you go to bed even, or set it in another room. If you want to read a book, maybe read a regular book, or have that blue light off on the phone because you can shut that off. But there are all different kinds of things that you can do for your bedtime routine. And it doesn't have to be big and elaborate, but just set it so that you have, some easeful time before going to bed. And I definitely recommend that you avoid things like reading or watching the news before bed, because that can be very stimulating and keep you awake at night. And that might even include not looking at email before bed, because the same thing. Because if you've ever gotten an email that was upsetting before bed, or you had a conversation before bed that was really upsetting, you probably had a hard time falling asleep because, that might have been running through your brain. So create a bedtime routine that sets you up for a good tomorrow. And then if you want to check out the news, check it out earlier in the day when it's not going to be with you right before you're falling asleep. The next tip, start your day right. So this one seems like, hey, no brainer, but how many times do you hit the snooze alarm or, rush out of the house at the very last minute? And if you're giving yourself maybe a bedtime routine where perhaps maybe even going to bed a few minutes earlier, maybe then you can get up a few minutes earlier. So you have space in your morning to move your body a little bit and you're not feeling like you're behind the 8 ball before you even leave the house. And, there are certain things that you can do to start your day right. One of them is having a cup of warm water in the morning to hydrate. You might meditate, you could journal, but again, definitely think about things like moving your body and having an intentional start to the day. So you're not basically playing in response to, other activities. And a big thing with starting your day right is making sure, so just like we wanted to put our phone to bed a little bit early, not looking at it first thing in the morning. When you look at your phone first thing in the morning, or you look at your email first thing in the morning, that's putting other people's priorities, their agendas in front of your own. So take the time to start your morning with intention. And then later, after you've, gotten through some of that stuff, then you can check email or check, whatever it is that you want to do. But when you look at your phone first thing, there might be a notification from somebody. There might be some upsetting news, that now it's put you in a mindset that is taking you down maybe a negative path that you don't want your day to go. So decide what you want your day to look like and have intention as you set upon your day. So I mentioned starting the day with some movement, and you can add movement breaks to your day. So this was one of my tips and tricks that I mentioned at the beginning of the call. So one thing I'll show you, I'm going to lay down. And I'm back. So here at my desk, I have a couple of dumbbells and I have a resistance band. And so if I'm on, maybe I'm on a call and I don't have to talk, I might do some work with my resistance band, or I might, do some bicep curls, or I might do some shoulder presses like I'm doing right here. And it's a good way to sneak in some movement. And then other things that you can do. I've had clients who, like, when they go to the bathroom, when they're done going to the bathroom, 10 push-ups, or they do 10 squats, or I actually do this in my house. So when I have to go to the bathroom, I'll walk to the furthest bathroom. And then after I come out, I take a long walk around, and then I have dumbbells actually out there as well. And I'll do, some bicep curls, maybe do some squats, and then I'll come back. One thing that I used to do is I would do walking lunges back from going to the bathroom. So there are all different kinds of ways that you can sneak in movement breaks into your day. And really the key is having an anchor. So that's why I mentioned going to the bathroom. So we all go to the bathroom several times a day, and you might say, okay, every time I come back from the bathroom, I'm going to do 10 push-ups. I'm going to do 10 jumping jacks. So you have that anchor or that trigger. So when I do this, and it could be when I get up in the morning. When I get up in the morning, I'm going to do 5 squats. Or after I put the water on for tea, so you might put the water on for tea, and then while it's boiling, you can do calf raises, or you can, again, do some jumping jacks. And you could have a list of different things that you could do, or you could just get creative. And, like I said, I really love having my resistance band, because sometimes you might not have room, or you don't want to have dumbbells with you, but look how tiny this is, and it's so light. You can pack this with you when you travel. You could put it in your purse or a backpack, and then you have an option. And there's so many things that you could do with a resistance band to, create and tone your body. And it's just a sneaky way to add a movement into your day. Another thing could be, like if you need to go to your mailbox and then take a lap around your house, or, walk the steps. And so if you're in an office building, actually, that's a really good one. You know, anytime you have to go to the restroom, all right, I'm going to walk out into the hall, I'm going to walk the steps, and then I'll go back in, and you'll get extra steps. And actually walking the stairs, you might even notice your heart rate rise a little bit. And then I had mentioned this one before as well. Space your meals for optimal metabolism. And I have a typo here, so you'll have to excuse my typo. But when it comes to spacing our meals, and I showed you the clock earlier, when you can have space, especially between your last meal of the night and your first meal the next day, and if you can get that like to 13, 14 or more hours, that helps your cells shift into what's called autophagy. And I always have to pause when I say that word, but basically it means self-eating. So your cells are eating the bad parts of themselves, and it can help with, you know, disease process, you know, getting yourself out of disease. And it also is a great way to shift into fat metabolism, because now rather than constantly shoveling food into your mouth and now your body has to keep metabolizing what you're eating, you can shift into metabolizing your fat stores. So we think about spacing our meals again overnight into the next day. And so an example would be like, say for instance, you're having that bedtime snack, you know, you're having some popcorn and some wine or some cheese and wine at 9 o'clock at night. And then you go to bed and you get up and you have breakfast at 6 a.m. 9 p.m. to 6 a.m., that's already less than 12 hours. So if you're not even at 12 hours, as a starting point, I would recommend you work to see if you can get to 12 hours of not eating. And then from 12 hours, you can possibly expand on it to 13, 14, 15. It really depends on your body type. So I mentioned Vata, Pitta, and Kapha earlier. So depending upon your constitution with those three, that would, you know, help us have an idea of maybe the time frame that you might want to shoot for. But if you're already like at maybe 8 or 9 hours that you're not eating, and then you're actually eating the other 16, it might be really helpful to shift it so where you have a greater time that you're not eating. Now, one thing that I do want to stress is that doesn't mean that, you know, the other hours that you are eating, that they're a free for all. Because I've known some people who do intermittent fasting, and that's kind of what we're talking about with that meal spacing. It's another word for meal spacing or rhythmic eating. And some people say, okay, well, I'm not going to eat for 14 hours, and then the other 10 hours, I'm just going to eat. And that's really not going to serve you very well either. But you want to have that space overnight. Again, starting at least at 12 hours, but we want to build it up 13, 14 to take advantage of that fat metabolism and that autophagy. And then we want to have space between our meals. So if you're eating every couple of hours, then, you know, we want to really look at what you're eating and why you're eating, because we want to have, you know, really ideally 4 hours between meals, so that way you're not constantly putting food in and not allowing your body to not digest the food. Because if you're constantly putting food over food, or what we call meal stacking, then your digestive system is working, you know, way too hard, and you're not going to really be able to absorb all the nutrients. And then on top of having issues with absorption, you may also notice that you might feel, you know, anxious or just like scattered, things like that, because it actually affects your mind as well. So quite a few reasons that we want to space our meals for, again, not just fat metabolism, but for, you know, our mood, our autophagy, our health in general. So big one here is spacing your meals. And then just a reminder, don't make resolutions, build habits. I mean, you most certainly can set a resolution if you really want to, but think about it more about creating the habits that you can sustain for a life, not necessarily saying, you know, I will never do this, or I'm going to lose 100 pounds this year, and you don't really have, you know, a way. So you have to kind of reverse engineer it. I want to lose 100 pounds, but to do that, you know, I have to start thinking like I'm that future person, embodying that future me who's, you know, weighs 100 pounds less. And what does she do what are her habits? And, maybe I need to start doing those habits. Maybe she walks every day and I don't walk every day. So now I have to start walking every day. And maybe she walks for an hour every day, but since I don't walk at all, maybe I'll start with 10 minutes a day, and thinking about that, making the habits that are sustainable that you can stick with. And maybe at the very beginning, it's 10 minutes a day for 3 days, and then it's 15 minutes a day for 3 days a week. And then you slowly build on and just, add on in small increments. We actually call that Kaizen, where we have the incremental small improvements. All right, so I'm so grateful that I was able to get through all of this really quickly. I know I jumped through a lot of it really a little quicker than I might have liked, but I wanted to just remind you that if you do have questions, we can set up a time to chat. Here is the way to contact me. And I will put this out in the email when I send out the recording, the link that you can use to set up a time to talk. And we can, sit down and see if we're a good fit for each other. And if I can help you, whether it's, with rocking your next chapter or any of the other services that I provide. I also do Ayurvedic health consultations, but it comes down to your what and why, and see if we're a good fit, for each other. And then I did mention a bonus for everybody live on the call. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording in a second so that way I can share that. But let me just jump forward. I did want to share, in case you need the information, my website is alisaexander.com, and you can learn all about me. We can set up a time to talk. You can email me at info@alisaexander.com. And again, there's the link to schedule a conversation. But I'll put all of that in my email to you when I send out the recording. And I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to start thinking about what it is that you want for your next chapter, because it really is important, because you're trading your time, you're trading your life for whatever it is you're choosing. So before it gets to a point where it's too late, make a decision, make an intention for what you want for the future you. So again, I'm going to pause the recording so that way I can share the information about the bonus. But thank you so much for your time. And I really look forward to talking to you again. And you have a wonderful day. I hope you all have an amazing new year. And namaste. Thanks so much.